Hey, what's up everybody? Thank you as always for swinging by the channel. Today we're talking about The Irishman. This is the latest from Martin Scorsese, coming to select theaters on November 1st and worldwide to Netflix on November 24th. And as you would expect from a Scorsese epic, the cast in this movie is phenomenal, with Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, and Joe Pesci as the headliners, with Harvey Keitel, Anna Paquin, Bobby Cannavale, and Ray Romano filling out smaller roles. This story spans many decades, and it explores one of the great unsolved American mysteries, that being the disappearance of union boss Jimmy Hoffa, as well as exploring the possibility of mob involvement and the potential political connections that could have actually played a hand in Hoffa going missing in 1975 to never be seen again. This story is told through the eyes of Frank the Irishman Sheeran, a high-ranking member of the Teamsters Union and a hitman for the Buffalino crime family, a man that was a close friend of Jimmy Hoffa, who, before his own death in 2003, claimed to have actually been the trigger man that killed Hoffa. Now, this movie has been my most anticipated one of the year. I love crime dramas centering on mob activity, and as a lifelong fan of De Niro, Scorsese, Pacino, and Pesci, you could pretty much say this was my Avengers Endgame for 2019, and at 3.5 hours long, I was not at all worried about the runtime, and after watching, I can say that Scorsese does use every minute to tell this story. It could have honestly been longer and still not lost its appeal, because I think there are so many intertwining dynamics in this era to cover. It's a strong 70s style movie with a very atmospheric tone that does a good job of luring the viewer in, and with compelling characters played by world-class actors, the result to me is my pick for best film of the year. As you would expect from a Scorsese film, it takes its time to develop the characters and the multiple layers of the story. The events covered in this one span several decades. There are a lot of moving pieces that I thought each were able to bring their own level of intrigue and appeal. The various subplots do weave together nicely to create curiosity and a foreboding tension of what's to come. Jimmy Hoffa was a very charismatic figure in his era. I enjoyed how this plotline built the foundations to his union dealings, his positions with the Teamsters, as well as how all of that intertwined with the political world, as well as organized crime. I mean, Jimmy Hoffa had put himself in the sights of many powerful figures, and when and how that was going to manifest itself was very interesting to see play out. The script from Steven Zalian doesn't spoon-feed the viewer exposition either. It does kind of expect a certain level of historical knowledge, yet it is tightly informative when needed to keep that emotional connection locked in while things are progressing. The story is told from the perspective of Sheeran with a flashback approach that I thought allowed for some effective narration from De Niro. Many times while watching a scene, the commentary from De Niro would come in to really add some dramatic layering, and many times some insight to what fueled the visuals being depicted on screen. The consistent timeline with De Niro recanting the events of the story also did create a smooth flow from scene to scene as time periods would change, and overall I enjoyed it. What was going on in the world around these focal characters was developed nicely through the conversations, and that is where I thought the phenomenal cast really came into play nicely. This film thrives on the performances from De Niro, Pesci, and Pacino. The result to me is a string of amazing scenes that were absolutely compelling and nostalgic and just constantly entertaining. I mean, sitting back and watching these actors work off one another just brought a smile to my face. It's the timing between them that was flawless, and to me it just felt like there was a subtle enjoyment between all of them that I thought translated extremely well on screen as well as into these characters. Pacino was a very charismatic Hoffa with a larger-than-life personality that you would want. Pesci was subtly intense as a higher-up in the Buffalino family, and De Niro in the lead was a layered character as a former soldier turned mob hitman and union leader. They all were able to easily bring their screen presence to the roles, but they were also able to disappear inside of these characters, and that's something that you really need when you have high-profile talent taking on the role of real-life figures. And the story couldn't possibly cover all the events that took place over this many years, but I thought it did manage to do a good job of getting the full spectrum of events inside. There were some gaps in some information here and there, but there was still a strong continuity to it, and admittedly, reading up on the real-life events will add some more depth to the backdrops of many of the time periods while you're watching. The talking point of this movie certainly is going to be the de-aging of the cast. That aspect of the post-production is what ballooned the budget and caused many delays in this movie being released, but the result was well worth it in my opinion. The various ages of the characters depicted was absolutely impressive. There were long stretches where I absolutely forgot about it, which does speak a great deal to what the technology was able to pull off with this movie. There was just an age styling to the movie already, one that kind of gives a strong time period atmosphere to the film. The color palette is slightly subdued, which does allow the de-aging to blend in nicely with the surroundings to give everything a nice, seamless, solid look. This movie really does take you on a historical journey filled with friendship, loyalty, political intrigue, and a lot of mob violence. The characters are continually being explored, as are their relationships with one another, and it all blends in together into a great mob epic. The violence is very Scorsese-esque. It comes out of nowhere, hits with impact, but never does it feel forced, and as you would expect from Scorsese in this genre, it maintains a grounded, realistic vibe, complemented with dialogue that is just very intentional and brimming with a lot of meaning. It's very intense and climactic, but never theatrical and melodramatic. The sense of humor splashes in nicely through the personality of the characters, and this one doesn't just tell a story, it creates an immersive setting with everybody in here bringing their A game. Joe Pesci is an incredible talent. He's only done, I think, like 2 movies since the 90s, but I mean, seeing him back in a role of this type was very nostalgic. It showed he still very much has what it takes to create an imposing mob figure. Al Pacino still has that energy that adds such a strong, vibrant charisma to any role that he has, and De Niro was every bit the lead this movie needed, with a performance that I simply think is award-worthy. For what this movie set out to accomplish, it absolutely succeeds, and The Irishman from me is going to get 100% on the entertainment meter. I absolutely loved it. It could have been longer and still told more layers of this just fascinating era in post-war American history, yet as it was compelling from the opening scene up until the end, with the screen title, I Heard You Paint Houses, closing everything out. I think the direction from Scorsese was polished. It really let the performers capture the mood and intensity with a visual appeal that really served as a complement to the story, not something that attempted to overshadow it, and I couldn't recommend checking this movie out more, either in theaters if you can, or when it hits Netflix. Now for today's My Silver Screen recommendations, I'm going to be selecting Goodfellas, starring Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro, and Ray Liotta, as well as another Jimmy Hoffa biopic. This one starring Jack Nicholson and Danny DeVito, called Hoffa, as well as another Scorsese classic, that being Casino, starring Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci once again, this time with Sharon Stone. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, drop it a thumbs up, leave a comment below. I'd love to talk movies with you guys. Share it with your friends, and without question, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you can never miss a video. Here are some links to some recent reviews just in case you missed them. All my social media links and the link to our official website are down in the description below, and I'll catch you next time.